Okay, welcome back to the deep dive.
Good to be here.
So if you've ever found yourself completely hooked by a story someone's telling, or maybe, let's be honest, feeling your mind start to drift off when someone's talking, you kind of already get what this deep dive is about.
Hmm.
We're going to unpack something really fundamental today, aren't we? It's about uh, human connection, effective communication, basically, the art and, I guess, the mechanics of storytelling.
Exactly, the nuts and bolts of it.
Being able to share something, an experience, an idea, even just something you noticed in a way that really holds people's attention and sticks with them, it
Yeah.
almost feels like magic when someone does it well. And the source material you've brought in for this is, well, it's fascinating because it started life as a guide for English learners.
Right, teaching the how-to of telling stories in English.
And the principles it covers, they're not just about language learning, are they? They seem totally universal.
Mhm.
They get right to the heart of what makes any story interesting, clear, memorable. Doesn't matter the language, really.
Absolutely. It's about the structure of narrative itself.
So that's our mission today. We're going to dig into these core ideas. We want to pull out those key techniques from your source that can turn, just listing facts into something genuinely compelling. We want to help you listening, make your conversations, your explanations at work, maybe just your everyday interactions, not just informative, but really engaging.
And I think that's such a crucial point. Broadening our idea of storytelling.
Yeah.
It isn't just for, authors or
I
filmmakers.
mean, not just campfire tales.
Not at all. It's baked into our daily lives. How was your weekend? What happened in that meeting? Can you explain this project to me?
Yeah.
These are all fundamentally invitations to share a narrative.
Huh. Never quite thought of it that way, but yeah.
And our brains are just, well, they're wired for it. Evolutionarily speaking, stories are how we make sense of things.
How so?
Well, we naturally look for sequence, for cause and effect. A story provides that structure. It helps us organize the kind of chaos of information and experience. And it's also a huge way we build empathy, right? By hearing someone else's story, we step into their shoes, just for a moment.
Yeah, you connect.
Exactly. So understanding these mechanics, we're going to talk about the ones in your source. It's not just about being entertaining. It's about using this really deep-seated human way of processing information to make sure your ideas actually land.
Yeah.
That they're understood, felt, and crucially, remembered.
Understood, felt, and remembered. I like that. It's about impact, not just entertainment.
Precisely. It's a fundamental tool.
Okay, great framing. And what I like about this source is how it takes this big idea, storytelling, and breaks it down into manageable chunks, really core elements. So we're going to spend our time today really getting into those key areas you mentioned, or structure, how to make sure people can follow along,
Flow.
managing the timeline, the tenses, when things happened.
Which can be tricky.
Definitely. And then how to add that spark, that life, that color that makes it stick.
Making it vivid.
Exactly. So let's start right at the beginning with the why. Your source makes this point right up front. Being able to tell a good story is just valuable. Full stop. In all sorts of contexts, friends, meeting new people, work. But why? What makes it so powerful?
Well, think about it socially first.
Okay.
You're in a group, maybe at a party or a work gathering, lots of conversations happening. Then one person starts talking, maybe recounting something funny or unusual that happened.
Yeah.
And suddenly people turn towards them. They lean in a bit. The side chats stop. What's happening there? 9 times out of 10, that person has started telling a story.
Right. It cuts through the noise.
Exactly. A well-structured narrative grabs attention in a way that just stating opinions or facts often doesn't.
Yeah.
In this world where we're just bombarded with information, bullet points, headlines, a story creates its own little channel directly to the listener's focus.
And it makes you memorable too, doesn't it?
Huge point. People remember stories. They remember how a story made them feel, the image it created, the point it illustrated. It anchors the teller in their memory far more effectively than just, say, sharing an abstract idea.
Yeah, I can definitely think of people I remember mainly because of a specific story they told.
And beyond just attention and memory, there's that connection piece we touched on. When you share an experience through a story, you're doing more than just transmitting data. You're offering a slice of your world, your perspective, your feelings.
You're being a bit vulnerable, maybe.
Sometimes, yeah. And that shared experience, even if the listener is just hearing it, builds rapport. It fosters empathy. It's harder to dislike someone when you've been genuinely absorbed in their story,
That's a really interesting point. It breaks down barriers.
It can, absolutely. And conversely, as your source rightly points out, we've all been on the receiving end of the other kind of story.
Oh, yeah. The one that just fizzles out.
Exactly. It just sort of wanders.
Okay.
Maybe it lacks details or it has way too many details right at the start that don't seem relevant.
Or the timeline is all over the place.
Right. The structure is confusing. You lose the plot, literally,
Hmm.
and your mind just starts to drift. You're thinking about your shopping list or that email you need to send.
Guilty as charged.
We all do it.
Yeah.
But that's the risk of ignoring these principles. You don't just fail to engage. You might actually disengage your listener. You lose them.
Okay. So it's not just about being interesting. It's about being clear and respecting the listener's attention.
Precisely. And the source mentions this focus on storytelling in English-speaking cultures, which is interesting. I think maybe that's more about how explicitly it's sometimes taught.
Right, like in composition classes or public speaking.
Yeah. But the fundamental human preference for narrative, that's everywhere. It's universal. Think about ancient myths, religious texts, folk tales, all the way to modern movies, TV series we binge watch.
You're obsessed with stories.
We are. Because they give structure to the messiness of life. They assign meaning to events. They connect us through shared human experiences. They are, you could say, like compressed experience packages.
Compressed experience packages. I love that. Explain that a bit more.
Well, when someone tells you a story, especially a personal one, they're essentially giving you the distilled essence of an experience they have. You get the setup, the challenge, the emotion, the outcome, the learning, all bundled up.
So you kind of live it with them, but without the actual risk or effort.
Exactly. You get the benefit of the learning or the emotional resonance without having to go through it yourself. It's an incredibly efficient way for our brains to absorb complex information, understand different perspectives, or learn social norms. It shifts communication from feeling like a lecture to feeling like a shared journey.
Okay, that makes total sense. It's efficient learning. So if it's that fundamental, that powerful, how do we actually get better at it? Your source material starts with the absolute foundation structure. It says without a clear flow, people just get lost.
You really do. Confusion is the absolute killer of engagement. If your listener is busy trying to piece together the basic who, what, where, when, they can't possibly be immersed in the story itself.
Okay.
And the source offers this beautifully simple three-step structure. It's like a basic scaffold you can build any story on. Simple, but honestly, getting this right changes everything.
Okay, let's break it down. What's step one?
Step one, set the scene. This is your beginning. The absolute goal here is context. Ground your listener. Answer those basic questions right away. Who's involved? Where are we? When is this happening?
The basics.
The absolute basics. But the source adds a really important caution here. Give just enough background. Don't overload them.
Ah, right. Resist the urge to give the entire backstory of everyone involved.
Exactly. This isn't the time for intricate histories or detailed descriptions of things that aren't immediately relevant.
Yeah.
Think of it literally like setting the stage in a play.
Yeah.
Bring up the lights, show the main setting, introduce the key characters, that's it.
Okay. Minimum viable context.
Perfect way to put it.
Yeah.
And the example they use is just brilliant in its efficiency. Last summer, I was traveling in Italy with my best friend Emma.
It's so simple, but look what it does. 10 words. When? Last summer. Check. Where? In Italy. Check. Who? Me and my best friend Emma. Check. As a listener, boom. I've got a mental picture. I know the time frame. I know who I'm following. I'm oriented. I'm ready for what happens next.
Okay, that's clear. Setting the scene efficiently. What's step two?
Step two. The action. This is the middle part. The meat of the story. Here's where you describe what actually happened. The sequence of events, the plot, the journey.
The core narrative.
Exactly. What unfolded? Were there challenges, turning points, unexpected moments? This is where the story really takes shape.
And the source says the key here is?
Add details to make it interesting. This is crucial. It's not just a dry chronological list. First this happened, then this happened. No. This is where you bring it to life, where you build tension, maybe inject some humor, show how characters reacted. The quality and choice of details here are what will hook your listener or lose them.
Got it. Details matter. What's the example here?
It builds on the first one. We got completely lost in a small village, and no one spoke English.
Let's unpack that. Completely lost. Not just a bit lost. It amps up the feeling of disorientation, maybe a little panic. Stakes are raised immediately. Right. In a small village, that's specific. It conjures a different image than being lost in, say, Rome. Maybe narrow streets, fewer people, more isolated.
Yeah, potentially harder to get help.
Exactly. And then the clincher, and no one spoke English.
Huh.
That adds a whole other layer of difficulty. It makes the lost situation much more challenging and, for many listeners, very relatable if they've traveled. These aren't just facts. They're details that create the predicament, build the tension. This is where the listener leans in.
Okay, so the action is where the interesting stuff happens, brought alive by specific details. Makes sense. Then, step 3.
Step 3, the outcome. This is your ending, the resolution. How did it all turn out? How was the problem, like being lost, solved? What was the final result of the events you described?
Bringing it to a close.
Yes, and the source adds a really smart suggestion here. Consider adding what you learned from the experience, or maybe how it made you feel in the end.
Ah, the reflection piece.
Exactly. It elevates the story beyond just here's what happened to here's why it mattered, or here's the takeaway. It gives the listener that satisfying sense of closure, and often a little nugget of insight or meaning.
So how does the example wrap up?
It ties back nicely. In the end, a kind old man helped us find our way back, and we even got invited to his house for dinner.
Oh, nice twist.
Right. The basic resolution is clear. They got found. Problem solved. But the details make it memorable. A kind old man adds a specific, positive character.
Humanizes it.
Yes. And then the kicker, we even got invited to his house for dinner. Right. That's unexpected. It turns a potentially negative story, being lost and unable to communicate, into this charming, positive, cross-cultural connection. That specific surprise in detail makes the ending really satisfying and memorable. It leaves the listener with a good feeling.
I really like that simple structure. Set the scene, the action, the outcome. It's logical,
Right.
but it's the job each part does: orient, engage, resolve, reflect, that seems key.
Absolutely. It's purposeful structure.
And the source used that skydiving example too, right? To show it in action.
Yes. That's a great one for showing how it works, even with a bit more drama.
So the setup, the scene. Last year, I decided to go skydiving for the first time with my friend Mike. Simple. When? Last year, who? Me, my, what? Going skydiving. Listener is oriented.
Perfect setup.
Then the action, the middle. We were so nervous, and right before we jumped, Mike looked at me and said, "What if my parachute doesn't open?" That's where the tension spikes. So nervous, straight up emotion, makes it relatable.
You feel it with them.
And then that quote from Mike, it's perfect, it's dramatic, it's maybe a bit darkly funny given the situation.
Captures that feeling of facing fear.
Yeah. And using his exact words makes that moment so vivid. It's like a little snapshot of peak anxiety. That's your hook.
Definitely the mini climax, as you said.
And then the outcome, the end. Luckily, everything went perfectly, and it was one of the most exciting experiences of my life. Clear resolution, safety confirmed, and the reflection not just safe, but exhilarating.
It ties it all up. Relief and positive reflection.
So that example really shows how the structure holds everything together. The setup, the rising tension with emotion and dialogue, and the satisfying conclusion. It makes it easy to follow and impactful.
It does. And it underlines that structure isn't about putting your story in a straitjacket. It's about giving it bones, making it strong and clear so the listener can easily follow the journey you're taking them on. Like you said, the foundation.
Exactly. Okay, solid foundation, structure. What's the next layer your source material highlights?
It's about time, right? Managing the timeline.
Yes, navigating time using past tenses. This is where, as the source notes, things can sometimes get a bit tangled, especially for language learners, but honestly, native speakers can mess this up too.
Oh, for sure. I've heard stories where I'm thinking, wait, did that happen before or after?
Exactly. Mixing up past tenses can make the sequence of events really unclear, and your story ends up sounding, well, a bit clumsy or confusing.
So how do we keep it straight? Well, the core idea is that while you're mostly using past tenses to talk about the past, different past tenses do different jobs. They signal different relationships between actions and time. Your source focuses on 3 key ones that do most of the heavy lifting in storytelling.
Okay, what's the first one?
The past simple. This is your workhorse tense for storytelling. Think of it as the tense for your main actions, the completed events that happen one after another and move the story forward.
The key plot points.
Precisely. The backbone of the narrative. These are the things that happened in sequence.
Got it. Examples.
The source gives good, clear ones. We arrived at the airport and checked in for our flight. See? 2 distinct actions. Arrived, completed, then checked in, completed. One followed the other, simple sequence. She called me last night to tell me the news. Called single completed action. Happened at a specific past time last night.
Okay, straightforward. These are the what happened next steps.
Exactly. They provide the forward momentum. You use this a lot in the action part of your story structure.
Makes sense. What's the second tense?
The past continuous. Now this one adds texture. It describes actions or states that were in progress over a period of time in the past. Its big job in storytelling is often to set the scene or describe the background situation when a main action, usually in the past simple, occurred.
So it's like the backdrop.
That's a perfect way to think of it. It paints the picture of what was happening around the main events or what longer activity was interrupted by a shorter one.
Okay, examples help here, I think.
Definitely. Look at the source's examples. It was raining when we left the hotel. So, it was raining describes the ongoing weather condition, the backdrop. We left the hotel as the main, shorter action past simple that happened while it was raining. The leaving is the event, the rain is the context.
Right, the rain wasn't the main point, just the setting.
Exactly. Or this one, I was talking to my friend when I saw a celebrity, again, is the longer activities was in progress. I saw a celebrity as the sudden main event past simple that happened during the conversation.
Ah, okay. The talking was ongoing, the seeing was a specific moment within it.
Precisely. So past continuous adds depth. It shows what else was going on, what the atmosphere was like, setting the stage for those main past simple actions. It shows duration or simultaneity.
Got it. Background action. And the third one, this is the tricky one, right? Past perfect.
It can seem tricky, but it has a very specific and useful job. The past perfect is used for an action that was completed before another past action you're talking about.
Okay, so it signals even earlier in the past.
Exactly. Its main function is to make the sequence super clear, especially if you're mentioning something that happened prior to the main timeline of your story, or if you need to establish a prerequisite condition. Think of it as signaling a little flashback or setting up prior context.
Right, avoiding confusion about which past thing happened first.
Yes. Let's look at the sources examples. They make it clear. By the time we got to the station, the train had already left. Okay, we got to the station as a past event, past simple. But the train leaving happened before we got there. The past perfect had already left, clearly signals that prior action. Sequence. 1. Train leaves. 2. We arrive.
Okay, yeah, if you just said the train left, it could sound like it left as you arrived.
Exactly. Changes the whole meaning. The past perfect removes that ambiguity. Another example. I had never tried sushi before that day, so that day is a past time. Maybe the day you first tried sushi, using past simple in the next sentence. But the state of never having tried it existed continuously up until that day. Had never tried describes that prior state.
So it sets up the context for the first time experience.
Precisely. It's essential when you need to refer back to something earlier than the main past time frame you're currently discussing. It keeps the listener's mental timeline accurate.
Okay, that breakdown really clarifies the different jobs. Past simple for the main sequence, past continuous for the background or ongoing stuff, past perfect for the even earlier stuff.
That's the essence of it.
And that little test sentence they included really drives it home. Yesterday, I see an old friend while I walk in the park, applying those rules. Seeing the friend feels like the main sudden event. Walking in the park feels like the longer background activity that was happening when the seeing occurred.
Right.
So see should be past simple and walk should be past continuous, which gives you, yesterday I saw an old friend while I was walking in the park.
Perfect. Sounds completely natural. And the tenses clearly signal the relationship between the two actions.
Yeah, you instantly get the picture, walking along and then boom, saw the friend.
And just getting that distinction right, even if you don't consciously think about the grammar rules every time, helps your stories flow so much better. It adds a layer of precision that makes them easier to follow.
Definitely. Okay, so we've got structure as the foundation, past tenses, managing the timeline. Now we get to the really fun part, I think. Adding the life, the color, the spark.
Yes, making it engaging, as the source called it. This is where you move from just reporting what happened to actually creating an experience for your listener.
Making them feel like they were there.
Exactly. You want them to see it, hear it, maybe even feel the emotions you felt.
Okay.
Your source offers 3 really practical, straightforward techniques to inject this vibrancy.
Okay, what's the first one?
1. Use descriptive words. This sounds simple, but it's incredibly effective. The idea is to swap out weak, generic words, especially adjectives and verbs, for ones that are more specific, sensory, or evocative.
Like avoiding nice or good.
Exactly. Instead of just telling the listener something was nice, show them why it was nice, using words that paint a picture or convey a stronger feeling.
Makes sense? Show, don't tell.
It's classic advice for reasons. Look at the contrast the source uses. Generic. The beach was nice? Okay. What does that even mean? Sandy, pebbly, crowded, empty. Tells us almost nothing.
Yeah, totally bland.
Engaging. The beach was breathtaking, with golden sand and crystal clear water. Ah, now we're talking. Breathtaking, strong emotional reaction tells us it was stunning. Golden sand, specific color, evokes warmth, texture. Crystal clear water appeals directly to sight, suggests purity. Maybe it was good for swimming.
Much better. You can actually picture it.
Right. Those specific words create a mental image and a feeling that nice just can't touch.
Okay, descriptive words. Powerful. What's technique number 2?
2, add emotions. Don't just recount the events. Share how you felt during those events.
Be willing to be a bit open about it.
Exactly. Emotions are the universal language. When you share your fear, your excitement, your surprise, your frustration, whatever it was, you give the listener a way to connect with your experience on a human level. They can relate, maybe remember feeling something similar. It makes them care more about what happens next.
Builds empathy.
Absolutely. And again, the source gives a great comparison. Simple statement. I was scared. Okay, we get the general idea. Fear.
Pretty basic.
Engaging statement. I was terrified. My heart was racing and I could barely breathe. Whoa, so much more impactful. Terrified is way stronger than just scared. But the real power comes from describing the physical sensations of that fear.
Yeah.
Heart was racing, could barely breathe. The listener can almost feel that physiological response.
Yeah.
You're not just naming the emotion, you're showing its physical effect, making it incredibly vivid and relatable.
Yeah, that definitely puts you in the moment more. Okay, descriptive words, add emotions. What's the third technique?
3, use direct speech. Dialogues is a fantastic tool. Instead of just summarizing what someone said, in direct speech, include the actual words they spoke.
Quote them directly.
Yes, it does a few things brilliantly. It brings characters to life. You hear their voice. It adds authenticity and immediacy to the scene. And it often injects drama or humor much more effectively than a summary could.
Okay, the example time again.
You bet. Source, example, summary. The waiter told me the food was spicy. Functional, but a bit dry, right? Information delivered.
Yeah, flat.
Dialogue. The waiter looked at me and said, "Are you sure you want to eat that? It's very spicy." So much better. You can picture the scene. The waiter's look, maybe a raised eyebrow. You hear the caution in his voice, the emphasis on very spicy.
You get his personality a bit, the warning.
Exactly. It conveys his tone, maybe a hint of doubt or concern. It makes the interaction feel real, like it's happening right now in front of the listener. It pulls them into the scene in a way that he told me it was spicy. Just doesn't.
Those 3 things, descriptive words, emotions, dialogue, they seem so fundamental when you lay them out, but they really are the difference between just recounting facts and telling a story people want to listen to.
Absolutely. It's the difference between a black and white sketch and a full-color painting.
Yeah.
They put the listener inside the experience with you.
And the source had those other quick examples too, right? The restaurant one.
Yeah, those were good for reinforcing the point.
So instead of just, we had dinner at a restaurant, which is, fine but forgettable.
Completely generic.
It becomes, we found this amazing little Italian restaurant, and the pasta was the best I've ever had.
See the difference? Amazing little Italian descriptive words painting a picture. Cozy, charming, authentic, best I've ever had. That's strong emotion, strong opinion. It conveys genuine delight and makes you almost taste how good that pasta was.
Yeah, it makes me want Italian now.
Me too. It turns a mundane event into a specific, positive, memorable experience just by adding description and feeling.
And the park example did something similar with senses, right?
Exactly. Instead of the flat, I went to the park yesterday.
Yawn.
It becomes, I went to the park yesterday, and the sun was shining, kids were laughing, and I could hear birds singing in the trees.
Much nicer.
It uses sensory details. Sight, sun shining, kids laughing, you see the joyful activity. Sound, birds singing. You're not just told they went to the park. You experience the atmosphere of the park on that day, warm, happy, peaceful. It creates this little multi-sensory snapshot.
It just feels more alive.
That's the perfect word.
Yeah.
These techniques breathe life into your narrative. They invite the listener to engage their own senses, imagination, and emotions. They're the tools that make a story vivid, relatable, and ultimately something that sticks with people.
Okay, this is all incredibly helpful. We've covered the structure, the beginning, middle, end framework.
Setting the scene, the action, the outcome.
We've covered managing time with the different past tenses.
Past simple, continuous, perfect, getting the sequence right.
And we've just gone through these fantastic techniques for adding life. Descriptive words, emotions, dialogue.
Making it engaging.
So how do we pull this all together in practice? Your source kind of brings it back to that simple structure at the end, doesn't it, as a practical tool?
It does. It uses that simple three-step framework, set scene, made of an action, outcome, to show how you can apply these principles even to really simple, everyday occurrences.
Right, like those quick examples about losing something.
Exactly. Like last winter, I was in New York City. Set scene. When? Where? Suddenly, I realized I had lost my phone in Times Square. Action problem. Emotion implied. Panic. Luckily, a kind stranger found it and returned it to me. Outcome resolution. Phew.
Super simple structure, but it works. Tells mini story.
Totally. Or the other one. Last summer, I was in Paris. Set scene. Suddenly, I realized I had lost my passport. Action problem. Bigger panic. Luckily, a fine stranger helped me find it. Outcome resolution.
Again, basic but effective. Clear beginning, middle, end.
And the point these simple examples make is that you don't need some epic saga to use these techniques. Storytelling principles apply to small moments too. Losing your phone or passport, pretty common, unfortunately. But framed with that simple structure, it becomes a relatable mini-narrative.
And you could easily sprinkle in those engagement techniques, couldn't you?
Absolutely. Within that framework, you could add, I was frantically patting my pockets. Emotion, descriptive verb. Times Square was insanely crowded. Descriptive words. The stranger who found it had this really calm, reassuring smile. Description. Or maybe they said something specific. Looking for this, he asked, holding up my phone. Dialogue.
Ah, okay. So the structure provides the container and the engagement techniques fill it with life.
That's a great way to put it. The source is essentially showing that storytelling isn't reserved for grand occasions. It's about finding the narrative arc in everyday experiences and using these tools, structure, tense clarity, description, emotion, dialogue, to share that experience effectively, even in brief interactions. It makes it seem less daunting, more like a skill you can practice anytime.
Yeah, it really does demystify it. It's not some innate talent you either have or don't. It's a set of skills based on these principles that anyone can learn and practice.
I firmly believe that.
Okay, so let's quickly recap the absolute core takeaways from this deep dive, pulling directly from your source's wisdom, but in our own words. First, the power of that clear structure. Beginning sets the scene, middle details the action, end provides the outcome, and maybe reflection.
Essential for clarity and flow. Keeps the listener on track.
Second, the importance of handling time carefully with past tenses, using past simple for the main events, past continuous for background, and past perfect for earlier actions.
Crucial for avoiding confusion about the sequence of events. Precision matters.
And third, those vital techniques for bringing it all to life, using specific descriptive words, sharing genuine emotions, and incorporating direct speech or dialogue.
Those are the keys to engagement, connection, and making your story memorable. Vividness and relatability.
It really feels like mastering these, as your source lays out, isn't just about telling better anecdotes at parties, is it?
Not at all. It's about fundamentally improving your communication across the board, making your explanations clearer at work, making your pitches more persuasive, making your teaching more effective, building stronger relationships through shared understanding.
Making your ideas stickier, as you said earlier.
Exactly. When you frame information or experience as a narrative, using these principles, you tap in to how people naturally process the world. You make it easier for them to understand, connect with, and remember what you're sharing. It gives you more impact.
It really highlights that being a good communicator and engaging speaker, it's a skill, something you can consciously work on and refine by focusing on these core elements.
Absolutely. It's learnable, improvable.
So maybe a final thought for our listeners to take away, building on these ideas.
Yeah, maybe something practical to try. Think about all the little interactions you have every day, every week. Moments where you share something that happened, explain something, or just recount part of your day. Could adding just one small thing from our discussion change the impact? Maybe one more specific descriptive word instead of a generic one. Mentioning briefly how a situation actually made you feel. Recalling just one line of what someone actually said.
Just one small change.
Just one. Try it consciously next time you're sharing something, even something minor. See if it feels different, or if you notice a different reaction in the listener. And flip it around too. When you hear someone else tell a story that really grabs you, take a second to think, why did that work? Were they using vivid descriptions? Did they share their emotions? Was there a great piece of dialogue? Chances are you'll spot these very techniques in action. It's a fascinating exercise. Maybe the next story you share, big or small, becomes a little laboratory for trying out one of these principles. Observe the difference.